Hey everybody, good morning and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Ann, Sleepy Ann today, and disembodied voice Justin, oh no, who I forgot to put in my ear, so he's going to be Justin from Beyond the Grave unless I remedy that, so let's remedy that. How is everybody this morning? Thank you for the resub, Pendrake. The sploosh has occurred, indeed. The sploosh is present and accounted for. Unlike my brain. There we go. We have fixed disembodied voice Justin. He is now non-echoey. At least he should be. Awesome. Yes, happy 1 month short of a subiversary. And I have to remind myself that tomorrow is the AMA. I haven't even looked at the questions. You guys this is your chance to blindside me. Although, Justin, did you get an email back from Courtney so we know what we're giving away? Oh, Justin has shut himself off. There is no Justin voice. With the 3 wings, Val, for the win. For the wing? Hello, Jetta. So today, we're going to be green stuffing. We are going to be looking at stalagmites and deciding where we want them on our rock trolls base and building up a base for them. And then building up little cones to become stalagmites. That's what we're going to be doing. Just for fun. We're building a cave base is what I'm trying to say to you. Cave base. Everybody wants a cave base, right? Boink. Alrighty. Rock troll, who is totally, completely done, except for his very ugly, non-done base. I can't say it's not an ugly base. It's just a very, very unfeatured base at the moment. Let me get him in focus. Let's get that out of the frame. Focusing, more or less. Reaper Maniacs, is that what people are now? Is that like the new term? It's no longer Reaperites, it's Reaper Maniacs. There we go. Now we can see. All right, cool. This is a pretty good texture for a cave base anyway. I'm going to be pretty chill today, guys. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. My brain decided that it would rather sit up and like say, but what if we can't get to sleep? And then, you know, be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Don't you hate those nights? And I am somebody who throughout my life has never really had a problem sleeping. So it's very annoying. It's very annoying when my brain wants to do this. I know that I can talk it out of it, but last night it jumped me. Yeah, exactly. 11 months XP. That's right. Every time you resub, you get XP. All right, so let's rip off a large chunk of putty here. Doesn't matter if we don't necessarily need to have this more yellow than blue. Like usually I say have more yellow than blue, but in this particular case, we're doing floor stuff, and floor stuff can be a little more stiff, so we don't need it to disguise joins or anything like that. I'm ripping away from the center because in the center on a ribbon of green like this, it cures down the middle, so it leaves you with lumpy bits all spreading off to either side. So especially as you get to the end of your strip of green, you want to make sure to leave a lot of room so that you're not picking up lumpy bits, and you may still end up with lumpy bits, so be aware when you are mixing it. I usually don't, Pendrake. I usually am a good sleeper. But, you know, it's just stuff. What I really need to do is kind of reset my brain toward more positivity, which is, I've been talking about that, I know, for for several weeks, but I'm really getting down and dirty about it now. Really, really trying to focus on like positive emotions and not like spiral off into stress or anything. It's more work than it sounds like, you know, especially when you're used to kind of worrying about stuff, right? But I am determined. I am bound and determined to be less stressed and more of a happy Ann, which I should be. Look at me. I'm in freaky California with a guy I love. And working in a job I love, and not working, you know, not having to go into work every day. Like, anybody should be thrilled about this life. I have freaking redwood trees outside my window. Like, what? WTF, Ann? WTF. That's all I'm saying. On Milliput? No, I don't like Milliput very much, John Davids. I just never got used to it when I was first starting sculpting. When I did use it, it was terribly grainy, and I know they make a super fine version now, and it's much better. The product that I used that was kind of like Milliput was Abe's Epoxy Sculpt, which is also thinnable by water. So, like, the nice thing about those is Milliput and Abe's both, they set really hard. And so, you can sand them. They're just really durable. And the nice thing about being water soluble before they have set is that you can use them to kind of, you can kind of smooth them easily into cracks and fill small imperfections and stuff like that. But I personally have moved over to green stuff for almost everything at this point, except for big basing, like building a base. If we were actually going to break off or snip off this guy's base and put him on a totally separate base, I would use probably Super Sculpey. But I've gotten good enough at green that I enjoy working with it. So, John David, I would argue with that. I think that people have demonstrated that certain like physical and mental activities like meditation and exercise can help with depression. It won't solve it, right? It's I have been in the influence of depression, so I get you. But I also have fought my way out of a depression through exercise. Essentially just trying to, engage myself in positive activity like that. I've slowly managed to do that. I was really depressed in my 30s. Had a long period where I was really fighting it. And of course, while I was undergoing all my surgery, that was a dark, dark time as well. So it's not better. It's just different, John David. What I really like about, I don't know, I've gotten used to green, and I like how manageable it is, like, because it's sticky, it adheres better to the surface, right? And then I can also, spread it really thin, and I can texture it. It's a little bit more resilient with the texture, so it's a little less inclined to show tool marks. Whereas with both Aves and Milliput, I find they show tool marks a lot easier. But green is a little bit, it's more bouncy. And so it doesn't hold every little tool mark, which can be irritating if you're trying to do fine detail with it. But if you're not trying to do fine detail with it, then you're cool. Right, John David, but I really feel, like, really strongly feel that that is my choice. I can choose to concentrate on the happy things in my life, or I can choose to spiral off into worry and, all the things I should be doing, right? So I am making a conscious effort, and you all will be able to see. If it works. I'm putting it on the line right now. You all know I'm trying it. So if I do the big like leap of fail, then you'll all know that it didn't work. I always do believe in being honest with all of you about what's going on. So yes. No, I am not Pendrake. I don't think I need it. I could, it would give it a bit more resilience, but this is a display model. It's not a gaming model. I think that rolling some thin cones, and I don't want to make them very large either. If I was making a really tall group of them, then I might do that. But I really just want a base on this guy that's not just its flat base. So this is very simple green stuff basing 101. It's really not meant to be super, super elaborate. Book stuff is going. I'm on a very hard chapter right now, John David. It's there's one character that I didn't identify real great with at the beginning, and because I wrote this book years ago, and I'm only now getting back to like serious rewrites. It's just difficult. Like, stuff has happened in the first book that I need to reflect in the second book and stuff like that. That's the problem with writing two books that are essentially a 2-book series, and then you get the first one all polished up, and then you go to the second one and go, wow, this is a train wreck. There's so much work to do, and so much rewrite to do, and there's so much more I could put in here, right? Yeah, so I'm there. But I'm on chapter 12 out of what I estimate now with the rewrite will be 25. So I'm almost halfway through. Then I have to go through again and smooth it out after I've made all my big changes and make sure that I'm consistent. Yeah, I'm not all about chemicals. I actually hate taking medication, so. Not really. I mean, I only did two of it, Saltor. Just a little bit. Yeah, John David. Well, I mean, there's an agent with it in their hands right now who asked for more of it. So that's about the best feedback you can get on your book. Also, my beta readers liked it and gave me good constructive opinions. I had a few, I sent it out to many people, but a few very good friends actually did read it and gave me feedback. And one of them actually got it into the hands of his mother-in-law, who is an industry professional, or was before she retired. So, and I also got very good feedback from her. Oh yeah, this is far along, Don David. This is the first book is like in like going out. Like it is going to be published come hell or high water. If all the agents decide they hate it, then I'm gonna just self-hub. All right, so we've mixed up our green really well. I had to stop and pluck a lump of blue out of it. It still looks a little lumpy here and there, so I may have some secret pockets of yellow in it. But I mean, and I'm going to need a lot more than this. Like, this is always the doom of green stuff, is that you're like, okay, I have way too much, or, oh noes, I just need a ton of this. So what we have to do is kind of plan out what we're going to do, like what areas we want to do with stalagmites. And if we're going to do that, then it helps to know what a stalagmite looks like. As always, we go back to our happy little... Nope, Cranston. Although I did talk about, when we were talking about mystery novels yesterday, I did say I should write the, murder in miniature. I should write the first murder mystery with a miniature painter protagonist. All right, so I looked up this very handy picture from Wikipedia to show you what stuff looks like. As you can see, stalactites are very skinny and needly, whereas stalagmites tend to be a bit more stodgy and thick, and they also can have like layers. See that kind of like spiraling up layering going on there? And you see the same thing here. They can also look like semi-melted candles. So what you're seeing, and they also can look like kind of like, pyramidical, like cone-shaped towers, which I like the cone-shaped ones. I'm probably gonna try to do something like this, which is much lower and doesn't have to go real high. If I was, as Pendrake suggested, if I was doing something tall and thin like this, I would have to use a wire to support it. I don't want to. I just want to get some features on this base. So I want to do more like a small mound, like just a little bit of this is more what I'm looking for. Because what I really want to do on the base is I want to put a pool of water kind of between his front feet with some little stalactite like nubbies around it. And then I want to do another set of slightly taller stalagmites down back here. So that is my goal. That'll give me just enough. Because remember, we're not trying to overwhelm the figure. We're not trying to do some big, elaborate display base. Because, well, for one thing, it's like, how much do you need to tell the story, guys? This is what you need to, like, think about when you do this stuff. I don't think I really want to go there. I don't want to go and do like a fantasy mystery. I don't want to cross the streams. That's never appealed to me. Okay, actually, that's a lie. Glenn Cook's Garrett Files mysteries are fantastic. That's a fantasy detective. But other than that, yeah, it's not my genre. It's not my genre. All right, so first of all, let's make a puddle, and then let's raise some stuff around it. So we're just going to take our big blob of green, put it roughly where I think I want my puddle to be. I want to give because this base is so lumpy and it has no edge, no rim to hold water effects, I must create a pool here and then rim it round a little bit with lumpy little stalagmites. Yeah, Garrett PI is one of my favorite. Like when I was a teenager in college and all that stuff, that was one of my favorite series of all time, D. Clermont. I still own the first 4 or 5 books. And not much has remained in my book collection that hasn't gotten transmitted to digital, but some of my old faves still have. So now we need to get our sculpting tools out. I should have done that before I started all this. I'm going to get my big spatch, huge spatch out. Huge spatch is going to be really good for shaping this puddle that I want to turn into kind of a water feature. Yo, trouble. Let's see here. What else do I want? I think I want a stiff Taklon brush because you can create texture on your green stuff through using the bristles, so I can get a nice fine texture if I want it. I think I want my clay shapers because when I start shaping stalagmites, I want something softer because they're very rounded. I may even put a layer of like water effects or something over the top of them to give them more of that softer feel. I have a lot of these clay shapers stuck down here. I wonder how many shapes I have. I have apparently lots of chisel shapes. And then I think I'm going to get out my edge tool, which I like. That should be good enough. I probably won't need Tiny Spoon for this. because you don't really, you know, there's not a whole lot. Yeah, I remember that book. Not very well, but I remember it. Wasn't really my kind. Oh, we're just doing some cave features with Rock Troll. So if you want to create a puddle, I am thus putting down a puddle of green stuff. And now I'm going to press and stretch. And I dipped my tool in the water. I'm using my big spatula because I want to create this feature. I want to create, because this base is lumpy and doesn't really give me, it doesn't have a rim, so it doesn't have anywhere where I can let water pool. If it did, that would be easier, because then I could just sculpt to the features in it and then pour water through the whole thing and create almost the water effect in the whole thing. Yeah, right now I'm just going to create a puddle or a pool, and I'm leaving a rim around it that's raised because then I can put some stalagmites on it. Yeah, we are very good at making fun of ourselves, us geeks. Now, one thing I am going to do is I'm going to try to make some of these stalagmites come right up to the edge of the base here. Kind of build some of the low stalagmites up here on the front. And then include a bit of probably a few more over here. Kind of make this more of a natural feature. Right now I'm just trying to get my water area figured out. I don't care if I just leave this kind of untidy rim because I'm going to be sculpting over it. All of this is going to become little stalagmites. I have sculpted a cave thing like this out of Aves, which is very like Milliput. It works fine. Like I said, it holds tool marks a bit more. It is nice and durable. I had no problem making the textures and shapes I wanted with it, so you could also do that. I just like working with green. And for me, because I kind of like to use green to sculpt a little bit more these days, just like for heavier conversions and stuff, any basing that I do, guys, is good practice for that. So if you do intend to use green to do conversions of, you know, that you might need a little bit more practice for, keep in mind that all the basing you do with green stuff is going to help you with that, because it's going to give you a better feel for the putty's texture, how long it has to sit before you can work it in certain ways, stuff like that. Green is a creature that changes over time. It starts out very mushy and pliable and easily flattened, and then it gets more and more resistant to being shaped as time passes. So you got to get used to that, and part of working with green stuff is to determine, you know, when is it the best time to blend stuff in, when is it the best time to leave fine detail if I don't want the fine detail to be really distorting, and what if I want it to be really shallow and fine, you know, how much does the green have to sit to hold all that, right? So, all right, so we've got a nice little puddle there. Oh, for this putty, green stuff is green. That's why it's called green. It is a yellow and blue mixed together, and it makes green, and you know that it is mixed adequately when you get a solid green color Astro Hellhound. I just paint over the top. Yeah, I don't think he cares, Dr. Bob. Remember, I am keeping a lot of open space here, but I want to extend my stalagmites a bit so that it looks more natural. I'm still going to leave, like, the normal cave texture that has been sculpted here. Who did we determine sculpted this? Was it Chris Lewis or Weeby? Might have been Weeby. I'm still going to keep a lot of this natural texture. I may come in and do something to this rim, or I may just leave it blank and paint it black, as is my normal MO. I did. It's a bread soup bowl. For now. It's a water bowl, actually, but you can't tell yet. Everything starts humbly. Eh. Hagar, you're terrible. All right, so we've got our bread bowl. I'm just going to call it that now. Bane. Got our bread bowl. Now we have to add little pokey bits that will become stalagmites. And as with all sculpting, start with simple shapes and simple groundwork and work yourself into more detail as you go. So I'm going to start with some very simple shapes here. And then I'm going to also be building the mound in the back here. This is actually pretty good that I'm doing this right now because I have this old green stuff that I really want to use before it gets even more infirm. And having a bit more blue, this is very dark green stuff. Having a bit more blue is okay, because the more blue you have, the more firm the green stuff will be. And the harder it will be when it cures. So, which is bad if you want to blend it into stuff, but good if you're building terrain features. Now, green is expensive to build terrain features with, so the reason I'm using green here is just because I know I'm only going to do a couple of different little clumps of stalagmites. And like I said, I want practice with green, and I feel comfortable using green for this. I think good motivational speakers babble on, too. Green varies in strength and consistency, Astral, depending on how much more yellow or blue you use. More blue is stiffer, less smooth, I would argue, a little less pliable, and it doesn't blend well into surrounding areas. Like, you can't pull it nearly as thin, so you can't, if you're trying to fill a gap, it's not good for that. If you're trying to sculpt a feature, and you're looking for something stiffer that's going to stand up to it, and not something that's going to rebound quite as easily as the yellow. I have that opposite. Blue is not going to hold marks as easily as a heavy yellow mix. Heavy yellow mix is like more goopy almost. It's easier to poke into. It's less resistant. So more blue will essentially give you more tool resistance, especially as it starts to cure. Well, I mean, Wapple probably orders it in bulk. You can order it in huge tubes, Val. I just don't use enough of it. The huge tubes are definitely more bang for your buck. And I used to have a huge tube, but like I said, I wasn't sculpting enough at the time. It wasn't worth it. All right, so we look at our reference, and the next thing I'm going to do is build up the ground for my little rows of stalags, and I might even suggest where some placement. Let me get my photo reference out again. I've never done this before in green, so this is fun. And I've never really done it this intensive. Even when I did the other cave base, I just kind of threw things around. I didn't really. So there's our little grouping. It'll probably, you just want to paint over it, Astral. I mean, everybody just does this stuff and then paints over it. And you can prime it if you want, with brush on primer or with spray. But although I wouldn't do like Sculpey, like regular Sculpey, I wouldn't do spray. I've had bad effects with that. But you don't want to tint it, because the thing is that when you're mixing it together, it makes a chemical reaction. Any other material that you try to introduce into that, such as pigment, is going to interfere with that chemical reaction in unpredictable ways. So I would not recommend it. Unless you find somebody out there who's done it and has not had adverse effects. If you do that, well then, listen to them. But otherwise, just treat it like a white primer. A white prime surface. Alright, so I want to build up more stalags there. I want another kind of a rim around this on the other side. So I'm kind of just, this is the fun part, by the way. Just kind of brainstorming where you want stuff to be. So I'm like, all right, I've got my big blobs down. Now I'll grab my tool, look at my stalagmite. Mostly it looks like we've got kind of like a scooping like idea. So we've got like a big one and that kind of scoops down, and there's maybe more down here, and then there's a couple in the middle. So I think I'm going to follow that. I'm going to grab my little scoop, and I'm going to scoop down and pull over on this one. I want a stalagmite cluster out here, and then I want kind of a valley, and then a bigger stalagmite at the other end. So I'm just going to start creating shapes. And I'm going to tuck them in at the bottom and kind of like get them grounded, figure out how far out I want them. Remember, this is only the groundwork, so we're going to go over this with more layers of green. That's one thing about green stuff. Because it takes time to cure, and it's actually why we might work on a different project a little later in this stream. But because it takes time to cure, you must let it set up before you put stuff, before you start building up layers on top of layers. So you have to give it time. And that's like any putty, right? But it means that you probably, after you work a bit, you should really put it aside. Instead of being tempted and trying to do more and more and more, you should give it time. And so I'm going to also tuck in the front of this, because I want to kind of make all this become one thing. Hey, Twisted Oma. The troll, yeah, he's cool. I mean, I like him a lot. David doesn't like him because he's green. I told him it's not easy being green, but he apparently didn't give any credit to that. I love green. Like, you know, sometimes as a painter, you just like get in this thing where you like colors or you don't like colors, and David does not like green. But I have always really liked olive green, like this troll is. And I like spring green too. So he better hope that if we get a house, I'm not in charge of painting like certain rooms, because he's going to have to deal with a green room. If he's listening, he's probably already making a mark. Don't let Anne choose room colors. So see how I'm trying to smoosh these together a bit? I'm just trying to create a rim out of my little, my bread bowl here, as you so nicely called it, Bane. I'm creating a bigger, fatter rim and blending together the components of that and seeing how far out toward the edge I'm going to go, kind of filling in some of this sculpted relief out here. Good morning, Inara. That's interesting that you don't paint with it. Although blue is a pain in the butticus, so, you know, I totally get it, Iffy, because blue is difficult. I've talked about blue being difficult. Because the dark versions of it are so transparent, and the minute you add white, it gets so opaque. So it's really hard to build up good blends with it, and you're better off working like a watercolor painter and building down. So starting lighter or starting middle and going down and then up. As long as you start with a blue that has a bit of white in it, you'll be okay. All right, so now we've got that. See, that's coming together. So what we're creating is a ridge here where we're going to put our stalagmites. He just didn't care for me implying that green was, you know, to be sympathetic toward, I think. So now I'm going to make actually little divots, guys, with my little scoop here. We'll see if I can get that other one to work. It was a little bit too far. I'm going to get my glasses on. 1 second. Here, look at crystals for a bit. Crystal gaze while I get my eyes on. I don't think green is tough. In our green is easy. All you need to do is put yellow and white in it, and you can make a beautiful, beautiful highlight. And it's super simple because yellows tend to be transparent. So just add pure white and lemon yellow to everything. You're gonna be peachy. Peachy. Well, not because you'll be green, but you know, unless you're the troll, then you can be both peachy and green instead of peachy keen. Wow, my brain is just like going various places today. I'm really not like watching my brain today. So if it runs off and, you know, does something weird, just, you know, just go with me. My brain is just having fun today. Okay, now I'm going to make another divot. That didn't work too good. It mostly less elongated my existing divot. So these are divots that I think I'm going to nest some stalagmites in. So I just want to make little marks kind of to remind myself where they're going to go, where I'm going to build up a little bit. I probably will do 2 little peaks here. I want to smooth this out. Wherever there is putty that I think I might just leave the way it is, I want to make sure that I am smoothing it out now. Otherwise, I'm going to have to put another layer over the top of it. So if there's any texture that I want to create on this rim around my bread bowl, I need to do it now while the green is fairly soft. The more you wait, the softer the texture will be that you try to put on. So if you let the green set up, you'll be able to get a lot finer texture, but it'll be a lot more lightweight. You won't be able to like put a huge, you know, deep marks of texture in the putty once it starts to set up. It's Toboggan Brain. I'm kind of stuck on D&D this afternoon. I'm like, wait, I finished my adventure. So we may just work on character creation. We may flesh out the monk, and we may talk about our Dragonborn Paladin. Since Xandros, it was pretty firm that he didn't want to be the one taking the hits anymore. Figure. He's a war cleric, or he's a storm cleric, but he wants to stand back and zop things, and he wants to not have to, you know, get maimed to do it. So Xandros is kind of like, you know, well, Zari, you know, this is great, and actually it was kind of fun, and I'll go along with you, and I like the idea of helping people in the community and all that, but we need to get somebody who can take a hit properly. So now I've got some more little footprints, stalagmite footprints. This also helps me like kind of think compositionally, even though I haven't brought the stalagmites up yet. I'm going to actually put another one in there. No, he's not a wuss, but he understood it very clearly in that fight that if he went down, everybody else was going to go down. Because the ladies were a bit more fragile and didn't have as good armor class as he did. So Xandros hadn't really had a fight, per se, since the island, really. I mean, he's been in school. And he's too old to get into fisticuffs in bar fights. So he's a practical man. So he's gonna start roving about with an eye toward recruitment. Since Zari seems excited about this new life, and she is really... Zari is the type who has a good heart, and she loves to help people, and so even though she almost died in that fight, for one thing, she's kind of a stubborn girl, and, she's like, I'm gonna get right back into this. I'm gonna get back on the horse. I know I can do better, that's Zari. And it's nice to know people. So, she's getting to know people. She's making friends. She likes the eccentric old orc lady. So yeah, maybe we'll work on character development today while I work. I also want to talk to you guys about where you want to go in the adventure, so that I have a direction, because I like having the characters drive the plot. So I have some ideas, but I'd like to get your input. So it'll probably be a pretty low role play, pretty much more planning our campaign kind of thing, where I throw some ideas by you. We talk about some characters coming up. A couple of characters are not going to be introduced yet. Like our Tiefling sorceress and our rogue, our elven rogue. Those are going to be the last two, I think. I'm just kind of letting the story flow and seeing where it goes, right? And it made a lot of sense after that fight for Xandros to say, let's look for somebody, somebody who can be our defenses, right? Because it's all well and good being a badass, but then, if you are a glass cannon, it's not so much fun, right? It's called splash damage, you crybabies. Awesome. Have I ever considered 3D printing? Wilk, I don't have a 3D printer. My partner and I, we're both miniatures people, but we just don't have room for it in our apartment. And we also both have a ton of miniatures, so it didn't make sense really to us to... We didn't feel we really needed it, and we have no room for one. I watched my ex-husband go down the rabbit hole of 3D printing, and I don't really feel like I want to. I'd have to acquire a whole new sculpting skill set to really work it, or I'd have to pay other people to do stuff. Otherwise, I could just sit here with putty and enjoy myself and make my own stalagmites. I guess my point is I'm better at sculpting in traditional than I am at 3D sculpting. So for me, a 3D printer doesn't make sense, except it just costs me a lot of money. So I kind of enjoy the organic process also of playing with putty. I'm going to curve my putty around. See how now this is starting to make kind of a frame for our bread bowl, i.e. a puddle, right? But yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people use 3D printers and print out basing stuff, and it looks great. I still feel, even with that, it's not always an easy hole to navigate. Plus, I still feel like the technology with 3D printing, to be fair, is getting better every year. So I'm really waiting for the user interfaces to get really easy so that even I can figure it out. And I'm waiting for prices to go down on really fine printers because, little striations and rings annoy me. And I'm just pretty much sitting there going, well, maybe. I mean, you could certainly, you can go out. Even if I did have one, though, I'll tell you, Wilk, I would still be tempted to take my putty out and alter stuff. Because there's nothing I hate more than mass-produced stuff. I want things to look unique. I want them to fit the setting. I'm really picky. I mean, I have a ton of basing materials that have been precast in resin and plaster and stuff like that. But even then, I don't normally reach for them unless there's one that fits perfectly and it's obviously exactly what I want. So I guess it depends on what you're looking for, right? If you're doing a lot of bases, like if you're doing an army or you're a DM creating dungeon setting environments that you want to throw together quick for your players and stuff like that, it can be very useful, I imagine. So I'm going to just make this smooth guys here, but don't, I probably will still build up small little stalactites on the outside, but I'm going to get my main stuff blocked in first. So we're doing pretty well here, but now I want a little bit of irregularity. The back of our bread bowl is too predictable. It's just a little ring. So I want to kind of add in some more chunkiness around here to vary the silhouette, but I don't want to get too close to his paws. So right now, what I need to do is decide, well, first of all, I need to fill in this little crack because that looks totally unnatural. So we got to mix up a little bit more green. Right, exactly. And it's already really good, right, Valentar? It's already, like I said, every year 3D printing is getting better and better. So, you know, there's always the choice, especially if David and I spring for a house, you know, then we have more room, then maybe we can set aside a place for it where it won't, you know, be subject to vibration and stuff like that any more than it always is in California. But, you know, and maybe one of us will have the oomph to figure it out. Probably David. But right now, I just don't see it. And I don't feel the lack of it. I love tech toys, but I'm not like, at this point, I have suffered at one point in my life from too much stuffphobia. At least one point in my life, where I have just come to realize that there is such a thing as too much stuff, and I need to watch it because it's so easy. If I get too much stuff and too much clutter around me, it's so easy for me to feel overwhelmed. So that's why I tend to, I'm at the point in my life where I won't buy it unless I really, really, really am psyched about it. Or I can see an immediate use. Right, even this year, the pixel size for resin printers dropped by half. Right. Yeah, and there's that too, right? Fumes and toxicity. I don't want that necessarily, so... Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I bought from Miniatures Guilds 2 of our player characters for our D&D game. The next 2 that we're introducing actually are our troll, i.e. a human that I'm turning into a troll. But our troll monk is an Etsy 3D print, and she's pretty nice. She has some artifacts, but it's nothing I can't get around. And then our dragonborn paladin, who we have yet to, or warrior, but probably paladin. Our upcoming person who can take a hit. Also is a 3D print. So yeah, they're getting pretty good, but you know, I'd rather just pay somebody else to print it out if I'm going to get it. Alrighty. So now I've got more green stuff and now I'm going to start breaking it into smaller pieces so I can stuff it into stuff. Yeah, I stopped that, I think, after I stopped it once in my life before Val, after I moved, like 4 times in 6 years. That was the post-college days. Where I moved, and then I moved out to the East Coast, and then I moved back home, and then I moved to Texas. Yeah, it's a fun color scheme. So yeah, after all that moving, I really realized that I didn't need as much stuff as I thought I did. And then this recent one was moving after the divorce and then moving out to California. So I really and realizing that, yeah, if my environment gets too cluttered, I feel really bad. So I have to watch out for my mental health. All right, so let's just leave this, since it naturally settled into a little peak here, let's just leave this little one here. This can be the start of a little stalagmite. And we're not going to worry too much about putting details about it because we're just going to use this as a foundation. We're going to skin it over after it cures and make it bigger. So this is our armature. We're just building an under armature with green stuff, and then we'll put more green stuff on top. And if you're not going to cast the model, then you can do that. If you're going to cast it, you always need a wire armature. But if you're doing something like this that's low to the ground, and you're just going to be working on it, you know, gradually, and it's only going to probably go a little bit higher than this, then by all means, just, you know, do this. Make green your armature and keep building up. It's fine. And it's also inset from the side of the, you know, it's inset from the edge of the base, so it's not going to get a lot of pressure on it. That's another reason I'm also making my stuff pretty low lying at the outer side of the base. So that if I do accidentally touch it, Oh, I got extra blue stuff mixed up in my green stuff. This is two bad things that go worse together. There we go. But yeah, so you could totally do that. Let's see here. Catching up on you guys. Yeah, I mean, if stuff turns you on, do it. It's just nothing. I can't do it. Not anymore. I'm trying. I am embracing the philosophy of less stuffism. Or at least I'm trying to rehome stuff that I'm no longer excited about so that I can, you know, get a little bit more stuff that I am excited about. But I'm trying to keep my stuff in kind of parity. I'm trying to tune myself down. I'm not a total minimalist, but, you know. Okay, so we put a blob back there. We're going to bring our blob in. We're going to kind of blend it in a little bit here. Again, I want some variation in how my water pool, the edges of my water pool look. I don't want it to just be a bread bowl. So I'm integrating various other chunks of rock and features. I'm going to take the edge here. Now this is becoming much stiffer. Our bread bowl is becoming much stiffer now, and I can't push it as easily because it's been curing for a little while. So now I'm going to have less leeway as far as shaping it. But I should still have enough pliability to kind of tie it into this stalagmite over here, this little one that we just put on, and kind of punch in the edges here to, I can't blend it. It's past that point, but I can at least put things a little bit flush. And then on my next layer of putty, I can build in, you know, more organic shapes and less tool marks, which is perfectly okay. I'm going to try to smooth out that area a little bit, though, just so I don't get artifacts that I'd forget to fix. But I still want to keep my rim on this. And I want to also probably take my tool in and flatten down various areas of my edge and make some a little wider and lower, and some a little bit narrower and more up peaked, so that I've got an irregular edge around our little bowl here, which will have water in it. Because when you can add a different element to your basing, it feels more like a story. It puts the troll in a very specific place. It's not just any cave. It's a cave with, you know, this cool water and stalagmite formation on the floor. And it gives you more information about where the troll is. And water itself just implies motion. Even when it's a pool of water, it can imply drippies. Maybe we'll do a drip. I don't know. He's kind of like over the top of this one, so I don't know if I can do a drip. Although necessarily there would be drips because that would have formed the stalagmites. But if he was, if I had a little bit more room on the base, then I could probably get away with creating a drip. Good, Grey Wolf, excellent. Oh dear. I mean, the bottom of the pool is going to be pretty smooth, because if you look at caves that have a lot of mineral formations and stuff like this forming, Pendrake, there's a lot of soft edges. So really, it's probably going to be a pretty flat bowl with buildups around the edges, crusty buildups around the edges more than anything. Mostly, I just want something to put a pool of water in. I want that extra element on my base. I like adding water. I think that it always, I really feel like it always adds a little bit of a sense of something different to the base. And hey, it gives you the opportunity to work with water effects and stuff. And the more you work with that stuff, the better you get with it. Just like anything. So I'm just putting in this back bit here, kind of keeping it rough like stone for this back lump. There we go. There's the lump. And I can always come in with more green stuff to texture over a lot of this floor if I decide I want it to be a bit more, if I want to work with it a bit, make it a little more specifically a different way. Maybe a little more lumpy, maybe not. So now I've got that kind of lump back there, and I can say that grab my sculpting tool and say, okay, this is going to be another stalagmite, so I'm going to make a divot. And say this will be a stalagmite. There. Kind of inset one there. I don't want it to be too regular, so I need to make sure that it's not just a circle. Oh, I scrolled. No, it's not deep enough for goldfish. I don't want something deep. I don't want something that I have to pour resin into. I'll use probably realistic water and just build up several layers to give it a little bit of depth. I just want that, like I said, I just want that extra element. Doing a dry cave is different than doing a wet cave, right? With the dry cave, maybe you would reach for like, you know, bone fragments or even pottery fragments if it's a really old cave. But with this cave, I thought I would like the suggestion that it's more moist. And then for that, I need, I thought I would like a pool of water, a moisture near the front. Oh yeah, I got that one. The Mandapar Pass one. I think. Huh. Yeah, I'm saving for a computer. Need replacements. My tech is getting old. So that's on my agenda for this coming year. Or for this year, I should say. The year that is here. Not this coming year. Our arrived year. So now you gotta be careful because now it's really easy to get fingerprints all over your green stuff. So now is where you'd kind of think about stopping and working on the back of the base. I've got a good map here as far as my intentions of what I'm going to do. I've more or less smoothed everything together so it looks organic. That will make a nice little outcropping for like stalagmites to come on. I've got all these nice little areas to fill with little lumps. And it fills the front of the base well. It's not right up against his foot. It leaves a little space like he's obviously stepping around it or about to step over it. But it's still like it fills the space nicely. It gives you a little bit more visual interest on the base so it's not just blank cave floor. Yeah. I mean, and they've gone up, Coos, even without Canada, they've gone up here in America even, because so many teachers had to start teaching classes virtually. And so that's what it was used for before miniature painters started grabbing them because they're awesome. And, you know, streamers who do fine work like this. And that demand, that spiraling demand made prices mark up. Yeah, but they're an educational tool. I mean, they're document cams. So a lot of them flew off the shelves when teachers suddenly had to go from teaching in person to teaching online. All right, so let's get some blobs back here. Where do I want these blobs? I don't want them to be too predictably spaced, but I think I want this one a little bit over. Maybe there. Maybe he's stepping between these two pools of stalagmites. I have to be careful. I don't want to like throw my fingerprints up here and smush everything that I've done. So I do have to stay mindful about where I'm putting my hands if I'm going to keep working at this point. I do have this green, so I will at least smoosh it and make use of it while it's still good. Yeah, that's about the same markup we're seeing. I got mine for like $350 and now they're like 600 coups. So it's not just Canadian. It's all over. It's all over. Because there's such a necessary tool for teachers during COVID. So it's just supply and demand. So now I'm going to start squishing these guys down, except not as much. This little one, I'm going to squish more. Maybe I'll make a little waterfall off the back even. I don't know. Normally I don't go there, but maybe I will. Maybe I'll make a fountain. Maybe I'll make a pool going into a pool. I don't know. I can. If I make one of these overlap the other, I'd need to bring that in though. I think I need more green for that. Or I can just kind of set it up where I could see where it might happen, and then I can sculpt more of it. Then I can add a little bit over here for more of a stalagmite and stalagmites in the front. But these look like fountain bowls that might have been kind of worn out of the stone over ages. So I think I'm pretty good there. Just kind of using my imagination at this point. So maybe we'll put a little waterfall going off and back. Boop, boop. We can have fun. Yeah, that's good, IPvo. Oh, Bob and Julie came on? I'm green stuffing today, guys. You missed it. You could have been like, she's doing it wrong. So what I'm doing today, for those who are new, is I decided I didn't want just kind of this boring cave floor. I wanted to make some stalagmites and a water pool, at least one water pool. Now it's looking more like two, to suggest that he's in a wet cave. This just essentially adds a little bit of extra story to the model and gives me some more interesting stuff to put on the floor than just stone. So what I've done here is I made my bread bowl, the central part, which is going to be a pool of water. I'm trying to make it a little bit more irregular. It did get a little bit regular. There we go. And then I'm working up, building up little areas around that, which I will use as platforms for my stalagmites. And I'm going to keep my stalagmites fairly small. If it looks good, it's not wrong. Thank you. Thank you, Julie and Bob. I'll keep that in mind. But yeah, so now we're building up platforms, kind of taking this time while the green is still curing to fine-tune and blend in a little bit. I'm probably going to end up doing additional skinning of green over the top to give them more stalagmite texture. But right now we're just kind of setting up our base. And then we will add to it and build it up with layers. Which is, you know, when you're first starting with green, it's easy to get impatient, right? You want your results, and by gosh, you want them now. That's the appeal of doing what... oh, I cannot remember your first name. I'm so sorry. What was suggested earlier, which is using 3D printed terrain, right? You just whip it off and you put it on the base and voila, it's done. But I'd like to put in a word for the enjoyment you can get of just slowly building up really nice, like sculpted features on a base that you did yourself. There's a certain like just level of enjoyment and engagement in it that I really like, to just be patient, get in the zone, and try to make something that looks cool. I think I want to build this up and shove that down. So I want to build more of a... Because my green is still fresh enough that I can kind of make a stepped effect on this rock. I think I want to. And I want more irregularity. This is partially why I love sculpting rocks, by the way. They're like, you can put all sorts of little cool details on them. Little details that'll be fun to paint. Oh, weird, Francis. Yeah, that's odd. Like mine is plugged in directly to my laptop, and there's like no lag. Now there's lag on Justin's end and on you guys' end. Like you see things probably a second and a half after I do them, I think, but I don't know how much of that is the camera and how much of it is just Twitch and the internet. I probably need a rock right here. I think I have one little tiny dab of green over here. I think I'm going to put it in there. Roll it off my finger. There we go. Yeah, I'm glad IPvo's good to work with. I mean, I read reviews and teachers just like loved how dependable they were and the resolution and the ease of use. I love having the controls actually on the camera base right here so that I can, refocus and zoom in and everything just by reaching over and hitting a button. It's really easy. It adds to the organic flow of the show. I really like that. So yeah, I will admit I love sculpting rocks, and I am now in my happy place. And these rocks are cooler, well, or at least more engaging than some like the Snake Lady rocks, where it was just repetitive and layering up buildups, where these are going to have like cool cave formations attached to them, and I need to think about how like water is flowing, and what patterns it's going to have etched in them, and how how the water would have shaped the surface to make it run this way and all sorts of fun stuff. I love doing that. I get into that. So make that and do that, and then maybe we'll have that come down in a little step. See my little steps? So then when I got this coming down, the water can flow down into this one and kind of go over here. I probably need another little stalagmite right here, which I can do, and I'm definitely going to do stalagmites all around the outside of this area. So now I need to mark those in. You tried Zoom. Francis, no, I use OBS Streamlabs, which is what Justin tends to recommend. Or at least he was recommending at the time, you know, we started up and I wanted something relatively easy. It is very user-friendly. It's, you know, it has its glitches and its moments. Okay, so I'm putting some little divots in here to mark where I want my stalagmites to be. Boop. Can make little stalagmites or huge stalagmites. I'm definitely going to be doing more along the outside edge here. It almost looks like a paw print. It's good. I made a paw print, guys, inadvertently. There. It's a cave doggy. A cave doggy came along while this was still wet and stepped in it. Alrighty, that's actually pretty good. So now if I kind of look at around the model, this is a pretty thin rim, so there's not a lot of room to do anything on it. I might put some rocks along this outer edge just to kind of make it all come together. I just fingerprinted myself. Haha. All right, so hold on while I get some water and kind of do a smoothie motion over here to take away the fingerprint I inadvertently put on it when the troll fell over. There we go. Much better. So probably I'll put a couple of little rocks with little spikes over here. Just tiny ones. Just something to keep the texture going. Yeah, it could be his cave pet. You're right. Over here, I'm pretty happy. I'm going to do another cluster probably here. I'm just out of my current ribbon of green stuff. So we'll move to a different model, actually. Let me see here. Come up today. Yeah, okay. So I'll be extending this area here. I think otherwise I'm pretty good. Like with a little cluster here and extending this area. Then my next task, guys, once all this... Oh, I do need to blend this in, though. See, it's just like a kind of a blob sitting on top. So I do need to grab my blendy any tool, for lack of a better term. But after this, when I do the next layer where I start setting up the little cones that are going to be my stalagmites, I'm also going to make more of an effort to blend in this green work to the existing base texture. So I'm going to bring in some more lumpiness that blends down into this floor work that looks like the floor work, so that these aren't just green lumps like springing up out of the floor. Especially not so important when you're in an outdoor setting where you can introduce gravel and grass for that, you know, to hide those joins. But when you're doing stuff that is pretty much bare and there, like this cave where the cave is the cave, you want to make sure you've got a good transition that makes sense, because if minerals have been dripping down and building up in these piles, they would probably be like little piles or little starts of piles all around this area. So we want that to, and you can almost see a little bit of it on some of this texture in the floor. He does have some slightly higher nobules and things, nobule being a special word that I just made up. And he has depressions also in it, so I can work with this. I just want to make sure that I'm not just having this one lump and then no transition. I want to make sure that I've got a little bit of transition, that it blends into the existing floor, so that when I put some brush on primer over this in preparation for painting it, everything will look like it's organic, blended together, like it's been that way all along. So, audio loop. Yeah, I was looking at a lot of those gem stuff. I just decided to go with my my normal setup. Because like you say, the basic setups for a lot of those RPG things are pretty ugly, to be frank. But yeah. All right, so there we are. I do have some rub-offs to fix on Mr. Troll, but I think I might put him aside. Maybe we'll work on something cool. We got, what, 25, 30 minutes? What do you guys want to work on? Do you have a particular model you'd like to see me work on today? I'll give you guys the call now that we've done some rock troll base, so we've started on something. We can go and for the last 20 or 30 work on something else. So if you're listening, if you think of a project that you want me to work on, you should shout out. Hey there, Jagged Flow. Oh, Highland Heroine. You want me to work more on the tartan? You want me to drive myself crazy with plaid today? And Neo Show says Sphinx. Crowley says plaid. That's 2 votes for plaid. Tartan, please. All right, back to the tartan. Oh boy. Anne gets her brain revved up. All right, well, let's put aside our sculpting tools then, and we'll set aside Mr. Rock Troll to cure. Oh, I can grab all of my minis. They're all up on the shelf right next to me, Muse's Touch. That's why I asked for opinions. Because, you know, all of the above is pretty much my answer to that. 1 second. Grey Wolf, it's different. Hold on, let me grab Highland Heroine. So we'll go out of order since you guys want me to be tartaned up. Green stuff is not better than Milliput. It is different than Milliput Grey Wolf. Actually, yeah, earlier on the stream I talked about that and Abe's Epoxy Sculpt, which is more like Milliput, and then green stuff. Green stuff is more like a, it's less like clay and it's more like a flexible, stretchy, it's almost more like Silly Putty. Actually, it's very like Silly Putty. There we go, and I've gotten rid of that particular green stuff. That's awesome. Now I can start a new strip. But yeah, it's better for some things. It's not as good as for others. Oh, that's right. I'm not gonna do any texture. Well, maybe I'll do texture, just a little bit of texture on the inside here. So one last thing, with my stiff little Taklon brush, I'm gonna make a little bit of texture on the stonework inside of my bowl, where the water's going to go. I just want a little bit of something. I'd have to press pretty hard to get a lot of texture, but this will at least make it look not smooth. Now, like I said, it would still be probably pretty smooth because it's got water running into it, but this will just kind of make it a little softer. Give me a little kind of stipply effect of texture. Let's see. There we are. Yeah, it's different applications, Grey Wolf. I mean, I tend to use green stuff for everything instead of Aves. I used to use Aves for everything instead of green stuff because I was more comfortable with the clay-like nature of it. But since then, I've become better at green, and now I prefer green, like hands down, for pretty much everything unless I'm building a big base. I realized that I don't like how much Aves or Milliput retains tool marks. I like that green is more flexible and that it doesn't do that. It allows me to not have every tool mark show. It was easier for me to smooth, so that's why I went that way. We are going void, aren't we? Yes, we are. Let me grab the correct color. Yeah, void blue. And green users say green won't break if you drop it. Also, Grey Wolf. And green users is Bob Rodolfi and Julie Guthrie, professional sculptors for Reaper for ages and for other companies also for ages before even that. So they know what they're talking about. But yeah, it bounces. Green bounces. Even on concrete. Jagged Flow, thank you for the 2-month resub. Brush on primer for Reaper minis. Yeah, for bones stuff, you want to use specific primers, Jagged Flow. A lot of aerosol primers will have bad reactions to PVC, and they will stay sticky and never cure. You guys, I don't prime bones. I just wash them, and then I put paint on them. So, like Troll here, I just painted over his base stuff. I've got a little bit of rub off here and there, but in general, it's sticking fine. So I didn't need to prime, and I don't prime. So I am not the one to ask about recommendations for a primer. Although, Let me see here. Oh, let me see here. Reaper brush on primer for you, Jagged Flow. It's what Anara says. Yes, trust everything Green User says about sculpting. It's true. Yeah, Reaper brush on works. Tester's Dull Coat, which is a transparent spray, is actually okay as a primer, I have heard. Let's get our base colors worked up here. Don't know how much we'll get done, but we can at least... oh, that's right. We were figuring out our grid. We were re-gridding out our grid after we screwed up. So that now we have a nice, even grid. Yay! Bob and Julie are knowledgeable people. Yep, Sinal Res works too as per Chibi Amy, so that's a either brush on or spray. But yeah, you pretty much there are very specific primers that work without getting you in trouble. Pretty much is what we're dealing with. There we go. So we're gridding out everything here. And at this point, I was going to think about highlights and shadows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to... I think I'm still of the school that I need to get my green down before I highlight and shade my blue and green. So I'm going to do that. So grabbing ye old cat's eye green. As I determined it was cat's eye and not Naga last time, I believe. Yeah, the sticky is because of the primer. The chemicals in the primer interacting with the chemicals in the plastic. AKT. That's funny because Duplicolor Sandable used to be like one of the cheapest primers, and that's why everybody recommended it, but now apparently it's not. Apparently they woke up and Duplicolor said, hey, people are really buying this. We need to make more money off of it. Oh, dear. I don't know. I mean, I got a can at Walmart. I don't know. David still gets like really just automotive primer for like our black. Our black primer is just a straight up fine grade automotive, so I have to be careful how much I spray on, but other than that, it works. But I don't use it on bones. Any traditional primer is probably a no for bones. You probably want something like the Badger and the Reaper where you can airbrush it, but it's also brush onable, and you're not, as they mentioned, as Valendar mentions, the aerosol propellants, the chemicals in the aerosol that are interacting with your plastic. Using Tamiya? Well, that's good to know. I love Tamiya, so that's great. No, I don't think so, green users. I think it's a permanent reaction. I've I've let a model lie around for months, and it's done. It's done. Like, maybe you could try spraying multiple layers of paint over the top of it to see if you could seal. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I kind of feel like it's bad. That's why I just tell people, honestly, that's part of why I just don't prime. For one thing, I don't see any reason to prime if I can get good results not priming. And for another, it doesn't even confuse people then. I just tell you, don't prime. You don't need to. That way I don't have to worry about all of the qualifiers. And if somebody's just on my stream for a few seconds, they can just get no, you don't need to prime them, just wash them. And they should be fine. Instead of saying, oh yeah, you should prime them. And then they do it and they ruin a beautiful model because they chose the wrong primer just because they didn't have the information. Like, so. Yeah, right, exactly, Magnetic Gumby. Yeah, and I mean, you can always seal them afterwards. If you really want a durable coat on the model afterwards, you can always seal. So, okay, so when you painted over it and sealed it, it stopped being tacky. But then, yeah, some other people say that they're tacky forever. So try that. Try a thick coat of paint and a sealer and then continue. Yeah, Dawn or Palmolive or anything like that, Neosho. Yeah, that's pretty much what I use. I just use dish soap. method, whatever I've been using lately. Next generation. Yeah, but you don't have to prime to, I mean, you don't need, with plastic and it being softer, I don't think you must prime. So here are our colors: Void Blue, Cat's Eye Green, and Pure White. So we're going to thin down our Pure White to about a 2-to-1, and we're going to finish gridding this out. We're going to put a green on, and then I'm actually going to try, I think, some highlights and shadows. If we have time. If we don't have time, that'll have to wait till the next time she appears on stream. So we're going off our typical stuff because Rock Troll needs time to set. His green stuff needs time to set. Oh, hey, you can see the dead detail there. See the texture inside the bowl a little bit? Oh, it's got a little bit of a stony, rough texture. So yeah, that's what that stiff brush, the stiff Taklon, my crappy Taklon that was like 50 cents. I do have a bunch of cheap brushes. They're horrible for miniature painting, but they're really good for for ruining in other ways. Not priming freaks people out. I know. Well, then maybe you're lucky, Kihasu. If you're lucky, then awesome. Maybe your primer just works with the PVC. Maybe the propellant isn't a problem. But if you ever do encounter that problem, now you know what causes it. Yeah, I mean, your mileage may vary, right, Valandar? It's always an individual experience. I always found that the paint just didn't like to stick to the metal, so I always primed. But with bones, as long as I can get a solid coat on, it seems to be pretty durable, so. All right, there we go. Got our nice green all set. Cat's eye. And our nice white. So let's grid. Yeah, I remember that too, Inara. Crazy people. That sometimes works too, Agent Marvel. Do be aware that there is a chemical reason for primer on metal. And it's because primers have chemicals in them that actually micro-etch the surface of the metal. And then what the primer does is it digs its little primer claws into those micro-etches. And so that's why primer tends to hold on better than paint. Paint doesn't have those chemicals. Paint doesn't micro-etch the surface. Paint is just sitting on there flat. It's not digging its claws in. So that's why primer can be a more durable starting base than paint. That said, if you're not handling your mini very much, or if you are sealing with a good sealer afterwards, you could be fine. But yeah, there are actual chemical reasons to prime, like as far as how it acts. That includes brush on primer, by the way. All right, so what we did before. So now I'm going to actually try to keep in mind what my lower surface is and not make my blue squares too stumpy. So I'm going to go a little bit above maybe what I think I should do. I'm going to compare this square to that square and go, okay, they're about the same size. That's actually good. And then I'm going to extend my stripe up. Widen it out. Again, I'm using thinned white for this. Because it's thin, it's easy to paint over. If I screw up, it's not going to leave like a blobby part or anything. That's why I thin down everything. White is a color that you can thin a lot. As this accordions, I get a little bit closer over here. There. But yeah, you can thin down white a lot and still get a very opaque coat, as you can see. And using thinner paint means that it doesn't make, a lumpiness on the surface if you have to paint over it. There we go. Stripes are on. Yeah. Yeah, honestly, if you're having good results with that, Agent, go for it. I think it also depends a lot on what kind of paint you're using and how you're applying it. Some paints are more adhesive than others. and some like to rub off really easily. So that's probably also a big factor, Agent Marvel, in priming or not priming. All right, so I want my stripes to be. And I'm kind of also extending this to make sure that I'm keeping an eye on how things are going over here as this shifts to being horizontal. Kind of keeping an eye on how my stripes are going to go. I want to make sure that I can kind of curve them as the cloak curves so that I'm not going to I'm not going to do what I did before and converge too much and get a big difference between. And doing just a thin line of white, it's really easy to paint over. I can correct it still. I'm just kind of marking out and keeping an eye on things. Yeah, that's old traditional inks made with lacquers. Valandar, probably. When they switched to more waterborne acrylic, when lacquer became a marker for acrylic resin instead of like the old chemical tradition of lacquer, that's where you probably see a switch up. But originally, artist inks were dyes in lacquer base. That's why when people say inks nowadays, I always have to stop, look at them, and say, so what do you mean by that? Inks are no longer the inks that I used to know. Get our grid. This I started up a little high here so I can kind of crunch down a little bit to make these a little shorter. And then I need to go up a little bit to make the stripe the correct thickness. You are drawing lots of tic-tac-toe grids. Hey, David and I are still on our doing yoga every 2 weeks, or twice a week, and it's 2 weeks into the year, guys. I'm calling this pretty successful New Year's resolution so far. And last night, for the first time, he reminded me. Usually I'm the one going, yoga, yoga, yoga. And he was like, hey, it's Wednesday. How did it get to be Wednesday? So it was yoga day. So yeah, so having a workout buddy is actually working. Usually it doesn't work for me. But this time it is. Alrighty. Here we go. As we get higher and higher. Down to my last couple stripes here. Yeah, that's because GW relies on paint flip. Not going to dropper bottles happens when you want to sell a lot more paint, because if you don't have a dropper bottle, your paint will dry out a lot faster. I'm sure they give all sorts of other, reasons not to go to droppers, but when it comes down to it, I hate to say it, but that's the real reason. Paint pots make your paint die faster. All right, so that looks okay. Altered Man, I have today we're back to the Raphael. Raphael size 1. Series is 8408, which is the thinner taper instead of the thicker brush. And it's a Kolinsky sable, which means it's one of the 2 highest grades of sable. So when you are shopping for a brush, you should know what brand you are looking for. You should know what size you want. And you should know what series, because in brush parlance, a series is related to the shape of the brush. So like I said, in this particular brand, the series 8408 means it's the thinner round, or the tapered round as they call it, which means it's less fat and it goes thinner faster toward the tip. And since I use a lot of very thin paint, this works well for me. If you use thicker paint, then you're going to get more mileage probably out of a thicker brush. But if you thin your paint a lot like I do, it works a lot better if your brush is thinner and more tapered, because you can control the paint a little bit better. There we go. I think I'm good there, guys. I think our grid, our base grid up to the side here, it looks pretty good, right? It looks pretty solid. Looks like it's consistent. I don't see any huge discrepancies. Looks like it's all good. I mean, there's Kolinsky. It's just Kolinsky. Kolinsky Panthera is what they call the grade 1 and grade 2 of red sable. So red sable is the same type of hair as this, but it's not from the same place on the animal. It's not from necessarily the same sex of animal, and it's not from the same season of harvest. Yes, it's that crazy. It's as bad as wine, I swear. So the top 2 grades of Kolinsky sable, or the top 2 grades of red sable are Kolinsky sable, and they will vary in price. So if you see a Kolinsky that is a little bit less expensive, it is probably a grade 2, which still means it's just a fine Kolinsky. It just may not be quite as classy and hardcore as, your grade 1. The other company that I use a lot is Da Vinci. I used to be just a Da Vinci girl, but my Raphael changed my mind this last year. So the Da Vinci I like is the Maestro series, which is their Kolinsky. It is the Series 10, which is their standard round, and also a size 1. But you can see there's a lot of difference here between sizes. So from brand to brand and from series to series, you will notice a large disparity in sizes. The smallest brush I use is also a Da Vinci. It's also a Maestro, also the Series 10, but it is a 000. This is the smallest brush I would ever use. I would never use anything smaller than this. There we go. So the Reaper brushes are also good workhorse brushes. I endorse the 05 and the 010. I painted with those while I was a staff painter at Reaper for 10 years. So there's the range of sizes that I use. From the 1 in the Raphael to the 1 in the Da Vinci to the 000 in the Da Vinci. There you go. Alrighty, now let's go in, and I'm going to switch to my smaller brush, actually. Maybe I'll switch to my middle brush. Get the old Series 10 size 1 out here. I want a smaller brush because as I paint over these stripes, the white stripes in the green, I want control. If I use a very large brush for that, there's always a risk that I'll get a little bit out of control, and I want to be very precise in painting over my lines. So I'm going to use a slightly smaller brush. It's essentially going to hold less paint, which means it's less likely I'm going to get a blob. Oh, good. I'm glad you ordered a brush, Francis. I hope it works for you. I find that moving to a Kolinsky from a synthetic is an automatic level up. Yeah, no problem, Altered Man. It's never too late to talk about brushes. Brushes are very important. You can learn a lot of great techniques and paint very well not using an expensive Kolinsky, but do be aware that these things, they have a lot more durability than your synthetics. So you might pay like $3 to $5 for a synthetic brush that you do okay with, but it's going to wear and start to hook and start to split after, weeks or at most a month or two, depending on how much you use it. Whereas this Kolinsky has been in my stable for over 2 years probably at this point and still has a perfect tip. So that gives you an idea what you're paying for when you're paying $15 for a brush instead of $5. Worth it every time. And it also carries paint better and releases it better and works better with thinner paint and just generally is a superior tool. So if you add all that together, my personal opinion is even at $20 per brush, well worth the money. My 000 here has probably been around. I haven't used it as much, but it's been around for at least a few years. In my brush stable. So now, given that, if you're going to buy a good brush, do make sure you don't do silly things like leave your brush nose down in the paint water. That will kill a Kolinsky just like it'll kill a Taklon. And you will cry if you kill your expensive brush. So do practice rinsing your brush and putting it aside instead of rinsing it and putting it in the paint water. I used the Raphael, the big one, to grid this out, and now I switched to my middle brush, the middle Da Vinci, my Da Vinci Series 10 size 1, to paint over it because I want more control. So no, I'm not using 000 on the plaid, Francis. No, I didn't in our, I've tried the contrast paints. I know what they are. They're really innovative paint technology. It's something you could never find working with a traditional paint company, because a traditional paint company would like, when you told them what you wanted in the base, would say, why? Because it would have no application other than producing a fantastic wash. But it produces a fantastic wash pretty well. Oh, I brushed over my blue, but that's not a big deal. But yeah, the contrast paints and the GW washes are a very specific base that is nothing that, they obviously made it custom. They work with a paint company to produce their paint that could do it for them. It's a special animal. So yeah, for painting like that, like, do your underpainting and do your contrast paints, or just prime white and use your contrast paints. It works. They're neat. It's not the style of painting I do. I would feel kind of like it was unfinished. But it's very good for painting fast, for gaming painting. You'd have more mileage asking Josh of Miniature Monday what he likes about them, what he feels about them. Since he paints fast for the game table, he might have a more specific opinion. With me, it was more like, "Ooh, neat trick. Yeah, those work well for what they do." And okay. They are, however, a one-trick pony. Like, okay, so that's the thing. Like, are they handing you the fish, or are they teaching you to fish? Games Workshop wants to hand you the fish. They want you to buy their products, all of their specific products, and use them all in a specific way. Instead of teaching you to fish, where you can take any paint product out there and use it any way you feel like, that's within its parameters, and empower you that way. They don't want that. They want a captive audience that uses their product. So it's the question of that, right? I mean, every paint has a thing it's good at. Every paint has a certain niche as a tool. Some are a lot more flexible than others. Games Workshop's paints are not very flexible. That's what frustrates me, is sometimes I've looked at one of their colors and gone, ooh, I like that color, and then realized it's a dry brush color, so it's absolutely useless to me. Because it's thick and chalky, and not meant for anything other than dry brushing. So yeah, I far prefer having the ability to thin myself, even if I don't get the absolutely perfect transparent wash coat. I'll deal with that. But then I am not painting armies for speed. Yep. Yeah, for sure. Did I actually use Naga? Like, I keep going back and forth on whether I used Naga or Cat's Eye on this. Now I'm looking at it going, maybe I used Naga. Maybe I need to go over with a different green. Oh, dear. I'm just like, I told you my brain is just bouncing along today, guys. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're going to charge you a lot for the fish. Yeah, absolutely. Well, they've got shareholders. This is why Ed didn't ever want to take Reaper public. He didn't want to be beholden to shareholders who expected the company to make a never-ending profit more every year. So be happy, guys, that Reaper is not a publicly held company like Games Workshop. I'm going to do some Naga and see if I was incorrect in my Cat's Eye. These brushes actually, Altered Man, they are traditional artist brushes. However, the more common usage for these size ranges is in watercolor painting, which should make sense to you considering how thin some of my paint is. It's actually kind of watercolor consistency. So it makes sense then that the type of brush that would be best at miniature painting would be watercolor brushes, right? That said, this type of sable is also used for oil painting. It's just used in much larger brush sizes. Wow. Yeah, it's crazy, bro. Yeah, the cat's eye is really light though, and the problem is that I'm going lighter with my my interior squares. So it does give us a higher contrast. But I do think I might have used the Naga instead. I've been switching back and forth between minis, and sometimes I forget between the cat's eye and the Naga which one I'm using. So I'm going to darken on my green just a little bit. Don't worry, we can come back for cat's eye for highlights. But I want it to look like it looks down there. But yeah, Acta Angel, I do like the contrast, the high contrast of the cat's eye. It's not quite what I started with. But it's easy to adjust. Well, I mean, it's okay. You have to paint over a bunch of little lines to adjust it, but relatively easy nonetheless. After we do this, we'll try to do some shading. Do some general shading over our entire grid. I have to keep an eye on the time though. Oh, we are actually over. So this is the problem with shifting minis in the same show, is that I get less done than I think I have less time than I think I have. Oh well, we at least got this grid set up for the next time we talk about Highland Girl, which will be next week. Toward the end of the week, I want to say. No, middle of the week, I guess. And then we'll have this all set up so that we can start trimming everything down. We can try some shading, a little bit of highlighting, see if we can get this entire section gridded out to look pretty and all. Yeah, I think it was a lighter green. This is looking more like what we had here. Cat's eye is has more ochre in it. It's a lighter green. It's a little higher coverage. A little more solid. But it's not as bright, and that's a trade-off. Actually, it's time to mention the Patreon right before I end. I put up my new Patreon video for $2 tier yesterday about the highest coverage red, orange, and yellow for Master Series paint, and I talk paint chemistry in there about why those colors tend not to cover, and I also give a couple of tricks for getting two-coat coverage out of those sorts of colors. So like everything from the type of brush you use to the color of primer you use, to, you know, like, and then I give you a trick kind of for getting two-coat coverage just by mixing something into your first coat. So yeah, go over if you're interested in my Patreon. Now is a good time. I just put that up again for $2 tier. So patreon.com/paintingbig. And if you like the paint chemistry stuff, my $5 tier has a lot of it. I do PDFs every month about various paint colors, what they're useful for, what makes them act the way they do, all that kind of thing. There we go. Nice solid green. Oh yeah, Anne's Patreon. Yep, that's the one. Thank you all. Yes, and thank you, and welcome to many new patrons. In the first 2 weeks of this year, I got a lot of new patrons, so welcome. If you are one of them, you are very welcome. I really appreciate the support. Every little bit helps. Alrighty, so we've got a nice solid grid on here. Our blue squares have gotten a little small, so I'm probably going to have to, I mean, some of this is just that the folds are scrunching them up, and some of this is that I got a little bit narrow maybe. So I do need to kind of look at that and assess and figure out how I want it to look in the end. Like I said, tartan, this would be a much easier tartan if I had gone larger with it instead of going with a very tiny tartan, but this is probably also more like what an actual tartan in scale would be, so that's why I went this. It is difficult. We're having to readjust and paint over things, but hopefully you guys will still learn something from it. All right. There we are. Justin, do we have a raid?
Yeah, let's see here.
And for those who wonder, this model, Highland Heroine, I need to fix her hair. Go ahead.
Jimmy the Brush.
Oh, yeah, we haven't raided Jimmy in a coon's age. Yeah, let's do that. Awesome, guys. Thanks for showing up. Tomorrow is Shadow Eyes, our cat rogue, Bob, that Julie sculpted. And we'll go back to the armor on that and fleshing out that model and just generally bringing her together. Thank you for coming to the show. Today, of course, we set up the green stuff base on Rock Troll, the start of building our stalagmite base. And then we switched over to some tartan just for a finisher. All right. Have a great day, you all. I hope that your end of week is coming soon is a happy thing for you. And I will see you later on the D&D stream. We'll talk some character building, and then I'll see you tomorrow morning if I don't see you there. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys very much, and we'll see you this afternoon for Painting Platinum.